Hi, today's topic is understanding APIs. What are they? And really, from a very high level, how do they work? So, before we jump into APIs, let's talk about how it is that files or information gets shared between computers today. And in today's world, vendor sends bigbank.com a file. Bigbank.com does some work on it and other data, and they may be sending vendor data after that. And it's cyclical and it goes back and forth. And make no mistake about it, there are millions upon millions of files being transmitted all over the place today, all day long. And they work. However, each file requires development time, requires a schedule, requires support. And if you think about it, every file has its own format. Now, sure, some vendor companies may produce all their files in the same format, but they all express data their own way. And if you just simplistically think of all the different ways I can express a date, year, month, day, day, month, year. I can have MAY or '05. I can throw time in there. I have to have rules over what to do if something's missing in there. I mean, it gets complicated. So files can be very complicated. And as more and more files are coming back and forth between computer systems, understandably, the complexity grows. Now, it works and it's okay today, but it fails in terms of immediacy of data needed for open banking. And what do I mean by that? Simply put, if I'm going to enable open banking and I am going to enable incredibly personalized customer experiences for my customers, I need data faster and I need to be processing it immediately so that if my customer walks out of a store having used my credit card to buy some clothes or something, I want to send him a notification or her and say, "Hey, congratulations on buying that new suit or whatever or the tennis racket or whatever you just bought in the store. Let's celebrate, and I'm going to give you $5 off at Starbucks, and it's right around the corner." That's the immediacy of data. I can't do it with files. I have to do it with APIs. So, what is an API? An API is a pre-formatted, this is how I like to describe it, is it's a pre-formatted conversation between two computers. And it typically consists of a series of requests that one computer will make of another, and they are formatted in such a way that vendor sends the request, bigbank.com knows how this works and knows how to send a preformatted response with all the data in it. Without any coordination, without any agreements, obviously we're going to have pure chaos. So vendor sends a query of Big Bank. Big Bank has no clue what it was just asked. It sends back garbage, and that leaves vendor going, what the heck is this guy doing? So what do? We get to APIs, within which we have agreed upon order of requests and agreed upon format of all responses, including all the errors. And so vendor has a request. I want an account list for customer ID 12345. Big Bank says, "Oh, I know customer 12345. He's got 3 accounts. Here you go." And if you look at this, here we go. This is what's called a JSON response. This is a format. It's textual. It can be almost human read. Um, but when we talk about being agreed upon, and I use that in both bullets on this slide, look at type. So type just says checking account, mortgage account, credit card. You and I, as we read that, go, well, that's obvious. I get that immediately. And you're going, so what's the big deal about agreed upon? Well, there are a lot of banks that call credit cards lines of credit. There are a lot of banks out there that may categorize mortgage as a loan and may categorize it as a personal loan. So what has to happen before anything gets done, before data starts going back and forth between two companies, you have to have total agreement on what these values mean and how. This is how big bank categorizes it. Vendor may have to go back in and say, oh, that credit card, to us, it's a line of credit. Oh, that mortgage, to us, we just want to look at it as a loan. And so that's what's going on to share the data. Now, we also talked about that there was an order to the request. So the first thing I do, and remember, this is all about financial data. So these examples I'm giving are financial data. And the first thing that happens is, first I want to get what's the list of accounts that this customer has. Second, once I have that list of accounts, now I can say, give me the account details on this account. And now Big Bank responds and says, oh, for this mortgage account, well, here's the date it was open, here's the number of payments, here's the principal, blah, 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 and all the rest of the data that goes along with this. If this is Big Bank's API, this is what they've decided to share, they're going to dictate what those fields are in account details. They own it. It's their API. They get to say, this is all I'm going to supply. And if vendor really wants to work with this bank, they're going to accept what they get. Now, they may ask for more and they may not get it. If, however, Big Bank is saying, I am, using XYZ, ABC, standard API for financial data, then they have to conform to whatever the standard says. And that may seem obvious, but it may not be that obvious. And I say that in that there are some APIs which basically want you to just share everything. They don't say you have to, but they just want you to share everything. And the banks are going to be a little bit iffy on this and say, well, interest rates, I'm not so interested in sharing. Competitive advantage. And I don't want you, vendor, knowing what my rates are and then going and try to undersell me with other banks. So that's one of the issues. So now I'm sharing all my data, but before we even can get here, there's a huge thing that we need to consider, and that's security. Security is critical. It is for financial data, there's an intense amount of security wrapped around any conversations that I'm having in the API. Because when you start with, you've got my big bank saying, hey, bigbank.com, here I am. I'm my big bucks, the fintech company, and bigbank.com is going to say, prove it. So what happens here is you can't, for instance, say, hey, I know my account information. All I need to do is jump on to bigbank.com's API portal and I can get my data that way. No, you can't. You need to register and you need to go through a registration process with bigbank.com and prove who you are, tell them why you need the data, what you're going to need the data for, which parts of the API you're going to access, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And what happens is my big mybigbucks.com goes and registers with bigbank.com. They trade SSL certificates. They trade application IDs. Bigbank.com will generate a client ID in secret for mybigbucks.com. They will have all of the IP addresses that each company is using. There's a lot of stuff going on in the background so that when mybigbucks.com is initiating that first API conversation and about to get customer ID 12345's data, it does this. I am client ID 043, blah, 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 with this code, and he may have to, in fact, he does have to give 3, 4, 5 other pieces of unique information to bigbank.com to prove who he is. And even providing this much may not do it. And bigbank.com may come back with a challenge, and this is all agreed upon. Hey, I'm going to challenge you every time, and now you need to come back with a response and tell me and prove to me who you are. And then mybigbucks.com comes back with a response, and bigbank.com is satisfied and being a very polite API. They thank mybigbucks.com and that says, now you can go and get your data. So in a nutshell, that's what happens. First, we set up security. Then once we set up security, we understand where we're going to ask for data, i.e. in terms of financial data, I'm going to get a list of accounts. I want to get account details, and then I want to get all the transactions associated with each and every account. And that is, from a very high level, how it works. I hope this was informative, and I hope you appreciated it, and thanks for listening.